Hello and welcome to the Chicago-Kent Legal Innovation and Technology Program webinar. I'm Nicole Vilchase, Assistant Dean for Admissions, and I will be your moderator for today's webinar. I'm joined by Daniel Martin Katz, Professor of Law and Director of the Law Lab at Chicago-Kent. Professor Katz is a legal futurist who is developing innovative new business models to transform the practice of law. Professor Katz teaches civil procedure, e-discovery, and entrepreneurial lawyering. He applies a polytechnic approach to legal education, seeking to arm the next generation of lawyers with science and technology skills. He received his PhD in political science and public policy with a focus on complex adaptive systems from the University of Michigan. He graduated with a Juris Doctor cum laude from the University of Michigan Law School and simultaneously obtained a Master of Public Policy from the Gerald R. Ford School of Public Policy at the University of Michigan. In a few moments, Professor Katz will provide an overview of Chicago-Kent's JD Certificate Program in Legal Innovation and Technology. After that, we'll use any remaining time for your questions. So with that, I'll turn the floor over to Professor Katz.
Okay, well, thanks, Nicole. It's great to be here. First of all, I just thought I'd start by offering my contact information. If you want to reach out to me directly, you see on my website is danielmartinkatz.com. And you can hit me up through there or through various other avenues. So we have a program here in Legal Innovation and Technology. So I actually would like to start with the market side of this, the market need, and then kind of come back to why we have this program. So I'd like to talk about what's going on in the changing legal labor market, because it informs what the choices that we've made. So I think there's several trends that you ought to be aware of what are going on, and some of you may know quite a bit about it, some of you may not, but kind of four big trends that I want to talk about. First one is what's going on in the in-house corporate counsel market. So most law firms derive most of their revenue, especially the larger ones, from selling their time, typically by the hour, to large companies. And so growth, what we're seeing right now is that the legal labor market overall has been relatively flat, except in-house. In-house, we've had substantial growth in the number of people working as lawyers inside of companies, and not so much, there's still large numbers of people working in law firms, but the growth in our market has actually been people going to work directly for companies rather than for law firms, again, as a percentage. The other thing we've observed is the growth in these sort of legal process outsourcers, which I'll come back to in a moment. But I want to show you this from something called CLOC, which is the Corporate Legal Operations Consortium. This is a group of companies who've gotten together to try to run the legal business more like another business, in the sense that people are trying to bring kind of business thinking and business discipline to the practice of law. So this group started off as a sort of a book club in Silicon Valley. It grew to the first time they had the meeting, there were 450 folks at it. Second time they had the meeting, there was 1,200 people. They had to move from California. This is the ballroom of the Bellagio, full of people inside of companies, lawyers inside of companies. They had it a year later, last year, it's up to 2,200. They're expecting north of 3,000 people at this event. And so what are all these folks doing? They're actually trying to use the types of techniques that we're teaching here, process improvement, better use of technology, better use of metrics to support the type of work that lawyers do. So attendant to that, we've seen the rise of what are called law companies. So people typically think of there being law firms. There are these things now called law companies, and they started, many of them, as outsourcers, but they're moving up, what we said, moved up the value chain. They're getting into more sophisticated types of work. The other big player that's moving in the legal market are big four accounting firms. So here's one of those legal process outsourcers, one of the fastest growing private companies. You can see here from Inc. 500. This company here is actually was one of the first wave of outsourcers. They sold their company to Ernst & Young. Ernst & Young is growing its global legal practice. I've seen statistics coming out of the Big Four where they're talking about doubling and quadrupling the number of lawyers and allied legal professionals they have over the next 5 years. It's another one of the outsourcers. They actually did a deal with a private equity company, but this is the biggest one. They just announced the last week that they intend to go public. They filed an S1 the Securities and Exchange Commission, and you can read about that. But I just, these are not the types of players that people typically think about, and I wanted part of a webinar is to sort of expose you to kind of the way we're thinking of it here and the types of trends that we're keeping track of. So they've grown substantially from a relatively small operation to north of 2,000 employees. So it's just a little more about that. So what happens is they're kind of climbing this ladder where they have, they start by kind of having lower priced lawyers than say a high-end law firm. And then they sort of said, well, okay, let's try to have better processes. And I'll talk a little about that in a second. And then the next step is, well, let's use technology and data together with better processes to build a kind of more holistic set of solutions to customers. And then there's the big four. Just to give you an idea of scale, the 10 largest law firms on earth are smaller than any one of the big four from a headcount perspective. So when they look at this market in legal and they see a lot of opportunity, because there's a lot of things that are on the margins, practice of law, accounting, it's especially in the corporate sphere, it's the differences at the extremes, the differences are clear. On the margins, the differences between the practice of law and what accountants do is very unclear. So this is, I think the answer is yes. And we, both Michigan State and here, we've been sending people to accounting firms, lawyers to accounting firms, because again, there's these there's work streams that are very hard to tell the difference between, and actually they kind of require both sets of skills. So more and more big four coming into first globally and now in the US. Here's PwC moving into the US in Washington, DC. So the last kind of another trend that you ought to know about is legal tech or legal technology. And that's what we've seen is legal tech has been growing slowly, but just in the last few months, we've seen significant amounts of capital. There's already been a lot of capital, but this stuff is beginning to really pick up. The amounts of investment that's come in this space to try to kind of disrupt the work that lawyers do with technology. These numbers are a lot larger than if you went back 5 or 10 years, it'd be hard to find one deal a year. Now we're having a deal a week. This in the retail sphere is the largest valued company in the retail area. This is a person who already founded a unicorn, a $1 billion company outside of law, but actually had a very bad experience with his lawyers, so he's trying to create a law company to compete with lawyers. So if you want to look around, just for, I would encourage you, I'm hitting you up with all these trends, but what I would encourage you to do is to do your due diligence about any of this, which is to go do some research and validate the types of things that I'm saying. Because when you think about, hey, do I want to be a lawyer? Do I want to go to law school? Am I interested in the legal industry? You ought to know kind of what's going on in it, and then kind of take actions from there, because we think there's a lot of great opportunities in this space, but you ought to kind of know what's going on and try to, again, do your due diligence. So if you looked at something, AngelList is a list of venture-seeking and venture-backed startups. If you looked on this list, there's about 750 legal tech companies, 1,800 if you search that are legal more generally. This list is not exhaustive. There are other lists out there. We think globally there's north of 1,200 companies. If you went back 5 or 10 years, it'd be hard to get north of 100 companies. So there's a lot of activity in this space, and most of the startups aren't going to make it. That's kind of the nature of startups. Some make it, some don't. But I think the sheer volume of activity sort of indicates that there is an effort to disrupt this sector. And again, it starts as a US-UK phenomenon. Now it's an everywhere phenomenon. So you went to Spain a few years ago, you couldn't find 5 legal tech companies. Now there's 30 or 40, and it's everywhere. So goes the world. So this is the big idea here. This is the big idea. These trends and many others that you can research, I have a tremendous number of decks online that you can look at that go into much greater detail about the things I've just talked about. We believe that organizations are going to need arguably better, but certainly different human capital, meaning different types of workers, in order to support just some of the trends I've highlighted in here. And that ought to be reflected, therefore, in the content of legal education. Legal education is, in a lot of ways, is very retrograde. It doesn't change very rapidly. And unfortunately, that's fine in some instances, but in the time of when there's quite a bit of change, you ought to be very careful and again, do your due diligence about whether the institution is actually taking stock of what's happening in the outside world. So this is kind of the way this has become popular. One of my former students kind of popularized this idea of a T-shaped lawyer. And it comes from this thing from IBM called a T-shaped professional. The T-shaped professional, you know, you have your eye there running down the column there, your depth of expertise. And for us, that'd be your, you know, kind of your legal expertise. And that's what law schools historically have done a very good job, is like helping you develop that expertise. And I just don't want to be misunderstood here at all. That is minimum. Like, you have to have that. But the thing is, if you can pair that with other things and have breadth of knowledge. Now, you're not an actual analytics professional or a design professional or a professional technologist or a professional project manager, but if you know if you can invoke some of those disciplines together with your legal knowledge and skills, then you're a T-shaped professional. And that's the type of kind of holistic professional I think is needed to be a lawyer in the 21st century. And so now that all brings us full circle to like what we're doing here. But if you don't understand those background facts, this program may not make as much sense to you. But if you understand these background facts, if you go do your due diligence, then this seems very consistent with what's going on in the world. So this school, Illinois Tech, Chicago Kent College of Law, has a long history of innovation. This is one of the first schools to teach anything, any sort of law with computers. And that's Ron Stout, who is emeritus professor here now, but has sort of started a legacy here at this school. And I do want to point out the IIT part is really important. This is the Law School of Illinois Institute of Technology. We're one of the few law schools in the country that is actually linked to a technology institution, and we try to take make use of that. So a few things that have happened here. I talk more in the kind of corporate sphere. Now let me talk about kind of in the access to justice field. This school helped launch the first statewide legal aid website. It's developed technology that's helped now, it's almost 4 million people now. It built technology to help people in the access to justice sphere. So building upon that tradition, we have launched a couple years ago the Law Lab. You can look it up at thelawlab.com. And the idea is to try to bring science and technology to make the law better. And so we do scientific research here. Some of my students, these are some older papers, but have helped on these papers over the years and have participated in the research here. And we have a set of training, polytechnic legal training. Now I want to make sure you understand, you do not have to have prior technical knowledge. Of course, it's helpful if you know some of this stuff already, but I've worked with many students over the years who really didn't have a tremendous amount of knowledge about technology. They've made huge gains. I mean, this is the point. If you already knew all this stuff, you wouldn't have to come to school to learn it. You'd already know it. So this is the point. We're educators. We're here to educate you. So let me show you what's in the certificate program. We have the core track, which is you have to take this class. You have to take a class in professional responsibility. We have a very business of law oriented version of it called practice and professionalism. Then we teach a class for basic quantitative competency called legal analytics, and that's about using analytic technology in law. We have a class where we teach you how to use that A to J author software, which I showed you earlier, to build technology, build little apps for legal aid. And even if you don't know how to program, we can teach you how. It's relatively straightforward. It's designed for people who don't know how to program to actually build applications. We're going to teach you project management and process improvement skills. And students who successfully complete it will get a lean yellow belt, which is the entry level belt in process improvement. And you can see there's a series of other electives. I encourage you to go to the website to learn more about it. I'll show you a couple. This is the analytics course. That's our advanced course. This is our process improvement class. I've been teaching this class now for 2 years with Nelson Rosario, who's an alum, blockchain law class. Again, we try to take stock of new developments in society, and this is a pretty important one in the technological sphere. And just to kind of wrap up, we don't just kind of do these things inside the building. We also want to project ourselves into the industry. So we've been running these conferences that have brought in lots of the leading thinkers. In this case, this was focused on blockchain and the law. This was focused on finance and financial technology and legal technology. And videos from those events, if you want to check out kind of what the conversation looks like, we have not quite 100, maybe 75 videos on this website called thewellabchannel.com. They're like TED Talks. They're like 15, 20-minute talks. So you can just watch one here or there, kind of get an idea of what the conversation looks like. Last thing I'll say is, we want to the reason we want to link all these skills up is to link up with what's going on in the labor market. So these are just some of the places between here and where I previously taught it. I started the program at Michigan State a number of years ago. These are some of the places that my students have landed. Our student was one of the ones selected by Reed Smith. Reed Smith is one of a set of law firms that has created a summer legal tech associate program, and because these firms really are desperate for technical talent, a number of them, people that know about the types of trends that I've highlighted here today, and frankly, that it's competitive. So it's competitive in the sense that they're more. We observe a lot. If you have these skills, there's more opportunities than people that are really solid. We're also part of this thing called the Institute for the Future of Law Practice. I think we have 9 students that made it to the final round of this year who will be working in internships, paid internships, relatively handsomely paid internships at law firms, corporate legal departments, and other organizations across law land broadly. So in sum, we'd like to welcome you here to the Chicago Kent College of Law, the Law School of Illinois Institute of Technology. This is my contact information, and thank you very much. I'll pass it back over to Nicole.
Okay, so with that, we'd like to open the floor up for your questions. So you can type your questions into the questions box in the webinar software, and we'd be happy to answer those for you. So give you a couple of minutes just to start typing the questions in. I'm going to go ahead and pull up the webcam as well.
Okay, here comes the webcam, everyone.
So we need some questions to come in from Professor Katz, and we are happy to answer those for you. Right, so our first question has come in. First, I'm going to make sure the
hello, everyone. Greetings.
There they are. And so first question is, can you get involved with the Law Lab as a 1L?
Yes. We actually have. We've had a Law Lab Fellows program. That's one thing we've had in the past, and we've had other sorts of opportunities where, especially to work on the research front. Now, we want to be careful in the first year that we don't overwhelm people, because transitioning to law school alone is challenging. It's a new language. There's a lot of new concepts, so we try not to overwhelm people, but there absolutely are opportunities to participate early on. But we are mindful again of not overloading people too much.
Okay, and our next question is everyone eligible to participate in a certificate program? I'm currently working at a large tech company, and I'm very interested in this one.
Well, I mean, everyone's eligible. Yeah, I mean, there's no restrictions. Yeah, so it's pretty much just do the requirements and you get, that's the story. So you can, what will happen is you can elect into the program. You just fill out a small form and you say that you want to be a part of the program, and then you just we'll advise you kind of how to structure classes to make sure you get all the classes within the time you're here.
So our next question is, what about opportunities to join the program as a part-time student?
Yes, so we have had a couple of students who are in the part-time program, the evening section, and a number of our courses, not all of the courses, but a number of the courses are offered starting in that 4 o'clock window, where it's just kind of a bridge between the the evening session and the day session. There will be probably at least 1 or 2 of the classes you may have to take during the day. just because we don't have the ability to run, 2 blockchain classes, for example. But we try to be flexible within reason to see if we can make it work. But it's not. It is usually folks, if they plan it out, can work it out with their employers. If they're, but not always, especially with substantial lead time. But we'd have to work that out at a kind of at an individual basis.
Great. So next question is, how will a law school curriculum that principally focuses on case law analysis change and be affected by adding a technological focus?
Oh, well, that's a very long question. I mean, that's a question with a very, very long answer. I would say that the focus on case law is, this is a much broader topic, but the entire focus on cases is well in excess of their actual use in reality. You would spend a lot more time doing like transactional work if you wanted to say, what's the population of lawyers do? There's a lot less of like studying cases, and it's a lot more like completing documents, running transactions through. So cases sort of sit in this backdrop. It's kind of the canon against which a lot of this work is done, but a lot of it, the transactional work, is passing documents back and forth with one another. So I just say, you're going to get the traditional treatment here. I mean, you're going to take the 1L canon like you take at most institutions, and we're not suggesting to get rid of it. I mean, some people have said, we shouldn't have a third year of law school. President Obama said we shouldn't have a third year of law school. I would say, first of all, we're having a third year everywhere anyway. So the question is, can we create more value pound for pound? And my view is this program is designed to make you a more well-rounded professional. So case law isn't going away in terms of the treatment, but or in terms of what you learn here in the time you're here. But I do think its emphasis is somewhat overplayed, and tech is actually, in some respects, revealing that, or the changes in the labor market are revealing that. I mean, if you looked at like what people studied, you'd think like 87% of lawyers are constitutional lawyers or something like this, which is obviously not correct at all. So anyway.
Next question is, I know you said you don't want us to be too overwhelmed during the 1L year, but when should we decide to, or when would we opt into the certificate program?
You can opt in on day one if you want to. That's, we'll take your letter of intent, but yeah, it's just mostly about not putting too many hours of time of activities around in that first year, particularly in the first semester of the first year. I'd particularly say, I mean, again, we want to make sure you have a holistic experience here and don't, and the canon is important. It is important to learn these canonical topics. And so, so we have had folks that are maybe doing, say, 10 hours a week or something like that, but that we don't really want to press it beyond there. We want you to do well in your first year classes and really learn the canon. There'll be plenty of chances for you to do additional things as time goes on, including in your 1L summer.
Next question is, what are some additional ways that Chicago Kent takes stock of the outside technological world and how it's changing?
What are some additional ways?
Are there other things beyond what you've talked about?
Well, I mean, this school, yes. I mean, there are, outside of this program, there are other courses that are being taught. I encourage you to look up, say, the work of Lori Andrews and Richard Warner on data security, data privacy, which is a whole other set of technological topics. I would say that the certificate program that I run is focused on the use of technology in law. There's a parallel set of questions about the law for technology. And we have a bunch of those types of courses going on here. Like, what is the relevant law when there's been a data breach? That's not something we do within the four corners of this certificate, but that is a parallel set of questions where there are, by the way, there's lots of people, lawyers that do that type of work today, where they, they have to know something about the technology, but they're, it's kind of these, you're using your legal reasoning, but it's the content of what you're actually talking about is a technological set of problems, essentially. So technology creates legal problems which require lawyers to solve said problems. And I just think if you want to be very effective, you actually have to know something about the tech. You can't just gloss over the details.
So next question is, how can somebody with technology software experience contribute to the law lab?
Well, one of the things, yes, I mean, we have we have a number of technical projects. You can look up some of the stuff we've done where that sort of expertise can be useful. I mean, that's probably the most direct thing I would say is that you can see some of the stuff that we've done. Yeah.
Next question is, I have an accounting background. Is blockchain cryptocurrency and the law behind it where you see a need in the future for accountants with legal degrees?
No, that's one place. I think there's a lot of places. I mean, our view is, law, finance, and accounting kind of are this triad. I would say law, finance, technology, and finance, accounting, what have you. Those are kind of triad. And there's a lot of problems that sit in the intersection between those things. So just a very simple example is, we have lawyers that negotiate contracts and surprisingly don't understand the rules of revenue recognition. And then to realize that they've negotiated themselves into a position where they got an economically worse deal for their client than they would have if they had understood just some basic principles of rev rec. I mean, I observe it happening all the time, even today, 2019. So there's somebody who has, it's just surprising to me the kind of lack of technical literacy or financial literacy, even among what are lawyers, white collar professionals, people who should know better, but just surprising how they really are. So my view to you is, please come into law. Believe me, so there's plenty of opportunities for people who can merge the two skill sets. That's not going to be an issue.
And can you talk a little bit more about the types of positions that students who work at the law lab go on to accept?
If you go to our website, you can see some of the folks. I mean, the program's only now, we're having our first cohort of people just graduate coming up soon, but I showed you that one, that Reed Smith example. So he took the job now long-term with Reed Smith, and he'll be starting in the fall, just as an example. So we've been growing the program. So between here, and I was at Michigan State, I started the program, the law and technology program, the legal innovation program at Michigan State. At the time it was called Reinvent Law. So between the two, I've had this much wider number of students that I've had. I've been here now, what is this now, my 3.5 years, and we started the program. So we don't have as many students yet. We have a big cohort, kind of much bigger cohort coming now. I guess it'd be next year they'd be graduating. So we're really happy to get 9 students into that iFlip program. We're hoping I think they're in the employer match phase. So now it's not guaranteed they'll get a position, but supposedly the odds are that they'll all get these summer positions, and then it's just kind of a math game. If you get summer position, the odds of kind of getting the next stage are pretty good, but not guaranteed, of course. Just because you get a summer somewhere doesn't, but it puts you in a good position maybe to get a long-term position. So that's why we spent all this time doing these events, to bring people in from the industry so that we can build these connections and try to create a pipeline of our students into employment opportunities.
So we have reached the end of time for our webinar. Realize that you may still have some questions that either we didn't get to during the webinar or that come up after the webinar. So I'd like to encourage you to please reach out to the Office of Admissions at admissions@kentlaw.iit.edu if you have any additional questions that we can answer for you. So we appreciate you attending the webinar today, and we look forward to speaking with you further about the program. Thank you.